Inga stared down at the table. She chewed and felt the dry piece of flatbread swell in her mouth. Without looking up, she grabbed her wooden cup and took a small sip of milk. At last she swallowed the mouthful and brought the cheese-covered bread to her mouth. She didn't want more, but she took another bite anyway. Not a word was being exchanged across the table today. All she heard was the servant, Laurent, clearing his throat, desperately trying to make the situation seem normal and break the prevailing silence. No one seemed to wake up from their deep sleep, so Laurent scratched his chin and reached for the coffee pot in the middle of the long table. With calm movements, he poured himself another cup of the hot, fragrant drink. He looked questioningly at the other two servants, but they glanced down and shook their heads slightly. Inga noticed that Laurent did not even try to offer her father more coffee. Christian Svartdal sat at the head of the table with a commanding view of his relatives and servants, but now it seemed as if his eyes were made of glass. He sat with his head raised and his gaze fixed on the jug of milk, but it was an empty look, staring into nothingness. It suddenly struck Inga that he would be considered handsome if only he did not have that grim-looking mouth, if only he could sit back and smile and laugh. No, she thought dejectedly, this is one of those bad days. One of those dark days when he lapses into memories and can't be reached. Inga did not dare look at him directly, but studied Christian out of the corner of her eye, his face, the intense eyes, the high cheekbones and the tight lips, the thick hair and the well-groomed beard that she had so often wanted to touch. But she never dared. The oppressive mood was like a silent warning in the air. The servants were exceptionally quiet, and her older brother, Christopher, did not joke as he usually did. Her other brother, Christer, had finished eating, but he was busy sipping the coffee that had cooled in his cup. When the meal was finally over, Inga breathed a sigh of relief and started putting the condiments back in the pantry. She tried to appear calm and restrained, but everything inside of her told her to put on her work clothes and get out of the house, away from her father. On her way out, she met Laurent. He threw his head back. "It's a relief that the meal is over, especially since the landowner is in such a bad mood." Inga nodded in confirmation, but could not bear to talk about it just then. She felt a tingling sensation behind her nose, and soon she would burst into tears. She rushed past the farm worker and into the barn. There she sank down onto the milk stool, leant her head against the warm cow's body and started to cry. "What can I do?" she wept. "I know this is the worst day of the year for Father, and it's all my fault. Everything is my fault." Christian Svartdal hardly noticed that the servants had left the kitchen. He sat there for a long time, lost in his own mind. He brooded on nagging and persistent thoughts. 18 years. 18 years, he recounted again and again. On this day, the 5th of February, it had been 18 years since his own daughter took his most beloved from him. He could never forgive Inga. She was to blame. Jenny paid with her life to bring her into the world. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. He understood so well that he could not really blame Inga for her mother dying in childbirth. But if Jenny had not got pregnant, she would still be alive. Nothing could change that, he thought in sorrow. Even though Inga had not asked to be born, she was to blame for Jenny's death. It was as simple as that. The grief pierced him. They had been happy with the 2 little boys. Jenny had not wished for a large family. She would have been content to stick to just the 4 of them. But eventually the thought of having another child, perhaps a daughter, had settled in her mind. And he had got carried away. He had wanted to do everything he could to satisfy his wife's longings. They had agreed, though, that this would be their last one. Christian pulled his pipe out of his inside pocket, stuffed it with tobacco, and started to suck on it. White clouds of smoke seeped out of his mouth, and now his daughter was here, on the farm. Every day she worked side by side with him, a relentless reminder of the woman he had lost. She was the spitting image of her mother.